And joining me right now is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Yeah, so what about that? The president making these moves without Congress. You've been really sticking to your principles throughout this entire fight over health care. Was what the president did yesterday what you wanted?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. 50 million people or more belong to associations like National Restaurant Association, National Realtor Association, bankers, lawyers, all these associations, they're nationwide. And there's the potential, if these organizations set up health associations, that millions of people could band together to get the economy of scale and bring down prices. And I think also many people who currently don't have insurance could possibly get insurance. So if you're a restaurant worker in a fast food restaurant, many times they don't have health insurance. But if 15 million of them get together and they go to the insurance company and say, we want a better price, my guess is they will have the leverage to get a better price.
And being able to buy insurance across state lines enables that.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things that most people don't realize, half of insurance sold in our country already is across state lines. It's called large group ERISA plans, self-insured, and these have been going on forever, and it's the one part of the marketplace that works. Premiums in the large group cross-state market have been going up about 2 or 3% a year. The individual market, 20, 30, 40% a year. So what the goal of this reform is to let individuals, if you're a plumber, a welder, an accountant, a doctor, and you buy insurance for you and your family or a small group, let you get the hell out of the individual market and get into the group market. And the people in the group market are people like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Amazon, Amgen, Microsoft. This is what people want. And so I don't understand the pushback of why anybody would oppose this, because big corporate insurance is what most small businesses would love to have.
Yeah. But it's not the overall reform that you've been pushing for a long time now, right? I mean, you wanted an out-and-out clean repeal and replace, and you wanted all of those taxes that Obamacare put into the Affordable Care Act. You wanted them out. That's not the case. I mean, this is not the repeal that you really wanted at the start of the conversation.
No, we lost 5 or 6 Republicans who voted in 2015 for a pretty clean repeal, and then when we got to 2017, they were no longer with us, and that was a problem. But the one thing I like about this is I think my proposal that we're working on now, and we're also working on legislation, has the chance of getting Democrats on board because it doesn't repeal Obamacare. I would still vote to repeal it, but all this does is expand the choices, and the individual market is very sick. It only exists with enormous subsidies to the insurance companies, and those are ending now too. So this gives people an alternative, and really I think the individual market is an aberration. It's an anomaly created by the tax code of linking employment to insurance, and really the individual market is a way for the insurance companies to segregate people over here and then say, oh, we're not making any money, we're not going to sell it to them, but they make gobs of money in the group market. So what I'd like to do is say, hey, we're all going to join the group market, and then guess what? Basically your profit will be spread amongst more people, but I don't think that this requires basically any taxpayer money, which would be great.
All right, let me ask you this. The president just said in that soundbite, look, if you have Rand Paul in your corner, it must be right, which was cute. But you are in his corner on this. Are you going to be in his corner on tax reform?
You know, I'm absolutely for cutting taxes. I'm absolutely for bringing down the corporate tax rate so we can keep our companies here. I'm for keeping down the individual or bringing down the individual rates. The only sticking point I've had is a detail, but it's an important detail. If you keep the middle rate at 25% and you get rid of 2 big deductions, how do we prevent the middle class from having a tax increase on this? And we've crunched the numbers. A lot of individuals have come to me and shown me their numbers, and it does look like it could happen. Now, I talked to the president yesterday about this. I talked to the budget director, Mick Mulvaney. They assure me they're not going to let it happen. In fact, the president pointed his finger at his aides and said, do not let this happen. I do not want to increase tax on the middle class. As long as we fix this problem that we see, I'm all in.
Well, how do you do it, though? I mean, look, the House Republicans are moving toward this agreement to preserve part of the federal deduction for state and local taxes, according to the Journal this morning. That would be one way to keep the break for middle-income households while repealing it for the higher-income households. Is that something that you could vote on, keeping a partial state and local tax deduction toward, getting just to get the bipartisan support?
I think there are 5 or 6 different solutions. I think that is one. But my point has never been that I love the deduction. I would get rid of the deduction as long as my rate came down to account for it, so not everybody in the middle class had an increase in their taxes. There are a lot of ways to do it. I think in the end, there's about 35 Republicans who are in really high tax states like New Jersey, New York, California, Illinois. And I think you're going to have trouble getting them on getting rid of the deduction completely. So I think one compromise might be for those below $1 million, they get to keep the deduction, or you get to keep a part of it, maybe 7 points of it instead of the full 12 if you're in New York or California. There's all kinds of compromises, but to me the bottom line isn't so much which solution, it's just that you don't have a significant number of middle class folks getting a tax increase. I think that's going to kill the deal.
It's 100%. I mean, you know, he's talking about the biggest tax cut in history, and yet if you're going to remove that deduction and you're going to come up with a fourth bracket, what about that? A fourth bracket for the millionaires. You are talking about higher taxes. Certainly for the highest earners, they get a tax increase. Agreed?
For most conservatives, I would like to see everybody get a tax cut, including the wealthy.
But that's not happening. For some reason, Senator, this whole idea of not cutting taxes on the rich is so taboo. Will you just explain to me where the whole idea of trickle-down economics has gone? I mean, for years I've been hearing you want to make an attrue environment for the highest earners, those job creators, so that they can reinvest that money. What happened to that notion?
I think what has happened, and this is true of Obamacare debate also, you have Republicans who have insufficient confidence in capitalism. Capitalism does allow people to become very wealthy, and those people pay a lot in taxes. The top 1% pay about 1/3 of the income tax. The top 25% pay almost 90% of the income tax. So if you take this class warfare theology and say, oh, we're not going to cut taxes on those who are successful, guess what? You won't cut taxes because that's where all the taxes are paid. So I am a big believer, yes, you should cut the top rate. I'm all for cutting the top rate. I'm also for making sure we cut the middle rate. You can't just cut the top rate, not cut the middle rate.
Right, of course.
You have to protect the middle income people because there's a lot of us, and I think you have to do something there. The president has assured me he's going to do it. As long as we get that problem fixed in the bill, I'm all in.
Well, he can't lose your vote. You need as many Republicans as possible, but are you counting on this to be all Republicans, or do you think you're going to get a couple of Dems in there to vote for this tax bill?
I think there's a possibility of a couple Dems. There's 4 or 5 Democrats who are in states that President Trump won by 20, 30, 40 points. And I think they have to be conscious of opposing the president on everything. And tax cuts are generally good for the economy. We've had an economy, an anemic growing economy for the last 8 years. I really think we will get growth. When Reagan had significant tax cuts, we had 7% nominal growth in a year. I think we can get at least a 3 or 4 if we have a significant tax cut.
Yeah, I remember that. That was 1984. You had a GDP of 7.3%. Senator, thanks for your leadership on all of the above. Good to talk with you, sir.